أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Dear friends, welcome to Idea Foundation Forum. Today in lecture 311, we will discuss barriers between fresh and salty waters under the Qur'an and Modern Sciences. It relates to oceanology. What is oceanology? Knowledge related with oceans, water. The Quran miraculously revealed in the 7th century that when the streams of salty water and fresh water meet together, they don't merge into each other and they preserve their respective physio-chemical identity for long. The Quran has called this phenomenon of nature as a barrier between the two waters, barzakh. Science could appreciate this Quranic truth on the basis of scientific discoveries in the areas of thermodynamics, chemistry, and oceanology in the recent past. Let us see how the Quran described this fact which was lately witnessed by science. Dear friends, there are several Quranic references that revealed the barriers between fresh and salty waters. However, I may quote only a few verses here. Ayat 53 of Surah Al-Furqan says, "And it is He, Allah, who has released simultaneously the two seas, one fresh and sweet and on salty and the other salty and bitter. And He placed between them a barrier and prohibiting partition, prohibiting, not allowing to be mixed." Ayat 61 of Surah An-Naml says, Is he the God not best who made the earth a stable ground and placed within it rivers and made for it firmly set mountains and placed between the two seas a barrier? Is there a deity with Allah? Is there some other deity other than Allah? No, but most of them do not know. Ayat 19 to 21 of Surah Ar-Rahman say, He released the two seas meeting side by side. Between them is a barrier, so neither of them, nor this nor that, transgresses. So, which of the favors of your Lord would you deny? It's very important to relate the last sentence, which favor of Allah your Lord would you deny, will needs to be related with the significance of this barrier. Dear friends, now let us see what are the recent findings of science. It is found that 97.3%, imagine, 97.3% of the Earth's surface water is saltish and bitter, which is mostly contained in oceans and seas. And it is not suitable for direct human consumption. And remaining 2.7%, just imagine, 2.7% is fresh water. Of this 2.7%, 68.7% comprises of ice caps or ice sheets and glaciers, and 30.1% is groundwater. Groundwater means which is accessible. It means the fresh water that is directly accessible for human consumption is much less than 1% of the total water. Had the divine order not created barrier between the salty water and fresh water, we would not have even 1% of drinkable water share in the whole water present on the earth. For that reason, Allah says this barrier, فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ. So, without the said barriers, the whole water would have been undrinkable, bitter, salty. It speaks of scarcity of fresh water on the earth while its availability is central for life. Life can't exist without this drinkable water. That is the reason preservation of this small amount of fresh water is described as one of the great divine blessings. In Ayat 21 of Surah Rahman, in the words, "So, which of the favors of your Lord would you deny?" As I said, فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ. This Quranic information becomes even more revealing when we find highly uneven distribution of the fresh water. In recent times, as we noticed, fresh water, which is less than 3% of the total earthly water, has been detained, mostly in the form of glaciers, groundwater, and soil moisture, securing it from becoming part of the salty water, seawater. Thus, these reservoirs of fresh water work as barrier against the salty seawater. It's very important to focus on the percentages. To meet the urgent animal needs, 0.3% is being rationed in liquid form. Of that 2.7%, only the drinkable water which is in liquid form is 0.3%, which is rationed in liquid form to the surface of earth for the use of human beings and animals. Of this 0.3% liquid surface water, fresh water, 87% is contained in lakes. 11% in swamps, and only 2% in rivers. Just imagine, the available water accessible for drinking is very, very negligible part of the total water. So, dear friends, the property of the waters that they meet together yet do not mingle with one another has only very recently been discovered by oceanographers, the people who study the behavior of oceans and physiology of ocean. Among them is Dr. William Hay, Professor of Geological Sciences at the University of Colorado, USA. To these scientists, oceanographers, it is the physical force known as surface tension, due to which waters of neighboring seas do not mix. Difference in the density of two waters causes the surface tension, prevent them from mingling with one another, as if a thin prohibiting wall has been built between them, as Ayat 20 of Surah Rahman says, between them is a barrier, so neither of them transgress, intervene, mix. This scientific phenomenon mentioned in the Quran occurs in several places, including the divider between Mediterranean and Atlantic Oceans at Gibraltar, and the place where the river Nile flows into Mediterranean Sea. It has been discovered that what distinguishes fresh water from salty water in estuaries is a marked density discontinuity separating the two layers. Such partitioning zones have salinity different from both the fresh water and the salt water. However, within these estuaries, difference of salinity gradually reduces with the wisdom because of the need to provide space to let freshwater living species which are coming from the fresh water through the river flow, flowing from river, get acclimatized to salty water life, from freshwater life to saltwater life. They are acclimatized before entering to the open oceans. You understand how delicate the system of divine order is? So, dear friends, the Quran also gives amazing information, amazing, wonderful, about springs as the reservoirs of fresh water completely detached from any salty ocean. Physical barriers between the sources of springs and salty seas keep the spring water drinkable, sweet. The Quran gives revealing information on the flow of springs caused by hydrocycle in Ayat 21 of Surah Az-Zumar in a very precise manner. Very precise manner. Note the words. Alam tara anna Allah anzala minas samai ma'an fasalakahu yanabi'a fil arz. Translation is, do you not see that Allah sends down rain from the sky and makes it flow as springs and rivers on the earth? The word yanabi'a in the verse means springs. Yanabi'a is springs. Science could appreciate this fact just in the last century, in the 20th century. In the past, people believed that the waters of oceans used to thrust into the interior of the continents by the force of winds and later emerged as springs, then flowed through rivers towards the ocean. Like the Platonic era of Plato and his followers, philosophers, Descartes, who is the 17th century philosopher, advocated this factual error even in the 17th century, which was kept repeated by several others, his peers and contemporaries, and later on till the 19th century, that the water of the sea just thrust into the cavities, into the interior of the land, then emerge as springs. Science could find just recently that the rainwater or water melting from glaciers keep on seeping into underground cavities, making freshwater reservoirs, large or small depending on sizes of the cavities. Science has found just recently, in the last century, when inflow of water accumulating by way of seeping of rainwater or glacier water, when inflow of this water exceeds the capacity of a cavity, it emerges as a spring and flows downstream, making its course towards the ocean. Through the rivers, through the streams. The information revealed by the Quran that there is a barrier between the fresh water and salty seawater may be seen as exclusive identity of the two waters in physio-chemical terms, as well as their physical separation, maintaining their respective identities for long. The fact we noticed earlier in Surah An-Naml. Thus, this scientific explanation witnesses the Quranic information revealed in the 7th century. Science found it in the 20th century, Quran told it in the 7th century. So, dear friends, rainwater is another amazing reality that witnesses the Quranic revelation regarding barriers between fresh and salty waters. The water that falls as rain is mostly evaporated from salty ocean. That is evaporated from salty oceans. Whereas rain is the means by which fresh water or sweet water is created. Without rain, there would have been no fresh water available on the earth. What a miraculous information. Creatures that live in the ocean can survive only on salty water, but organisms on land, continental land, generally depend on fresh water for survival. Thus, the animal life would either have not existed on land or it would have evolved in a different manner. Now notice how the Quran has described the rain as source of fresh water and its necessity for life. Ayat 48-49 of Surah Al-Furqan say, just focus on the words, I translate. We send down from heaven pure water, sweet water, not salty water, so that by it we can bring a dead land to life, and we give it as drink to many animals and people we have created. Ayat 22 of Surah Al-Hijr says, and we have sent the fertilizing winds and sent down water from the sky and given you drink from it, and you are not its retainers. It is God who retains it in glaciers, then in the springs, then in the lakes, then drive it through the rivers to the ocean. Just imagine the, divine order. Ayat 68-70 of Surah Al-Waqiah say, and have you seen the water that you drink? It's a question. Is it you who brought it down from the clouds? Or is it we, God, who bring it down? If we willed, if Allah willed, we could make it bitter, salty, undrinkable. So why are you not grateful? Just imagine. Imagine the precision of the divine order. Fresh rainy water is kept in the barriers of glaciers and lakes, then let it flow into springs and rivers throughout the land to sustain life. Imagine, when need of all the living organisms on land, continental land, is accomplished, surplus fresh water falls into the salty ocean, and thus a new hydro cycle begins to perpetuate provision of fresh water in future times as well. Moreover, the earth's surface is almost stably divided into 71% water and 29% continental land, dry land. This ratio is miraculously revealed in the Quran. Sea, oceans, is mentioned 32 times. How many times? 32 times. And land is mentioned 13 times, 1-3, in the Quran. Proportionately, it comes at 71.11% for water or seas and 28.889 or 29% for continental land. Just imagine, it's another, miracle, wonder of Quran. Is it a mere chance, or a well deliberated divine revelation to educate the humanity? It invites us to think. Let's think. Let's the generation of humanity and future generations think on the miracles, wonderful information given by Quran in its verses. So dear friends, with this we conclude our discussion under lecture 311. Please do subscribe Idea Foundation YouTube channel to watch videos of previous lectures and join us for the noble cause. Thank you friends for participation. Allah Hafiz.